on closing disclosure changes. We're going to talk about, well, Noah's going to talk about the CFPB rules and how they affect you. And you will learn more about what the CFPB is if you're asking, what is the CFPB? So we are fortunate today to have Noah Blanton with us. He is the division president for Stewart Title in the Portland metro area. He's been with Stewart for over 15 years and has held positions ranging from customer service to management roles. For many years, he closed real estate transactions, closing thousands of individual residential and commercial transactions. His current role includes leading change management initiatives for Stewart, including implementing company policies and responses to the changing regulatory environment. He has spoken extensively in the metro area on the CFPB topic and is a member of Stewart's Internal Regulatory Advisory Board. I'm pleased to say that Stewart Title is a great supporter of the Oregon Realtors, along with many of our other title company partners. And without further ado, here's Noah.
Well, thank you, Jenny. That is a very nice introduction, and I am really pleased to be speaking to you all today on the CFPB. It's a topic that, if you have some peripheral kind of awareness of it, is going to become an increasing part of our life over the next 12 to 18 months. And we think it's important to begin having that discussion. And specifically today, I want to talk about understanding the proposed changes to the closing statement and the good faith estimate and the truth in lending disclosure. So I always kind of like to begin this presentation by kind of posing the question, how many people listening in would be surprised if at this time next year there was no HUD statement, no good faith estimate, and no truth in lending disclosure. And typically that does a good job of perking people up and having them open their eyes. If that didn't surprise you, then you might be bored for the next 45 minutes or so. But otherwise, you'll enjoy what we have to talk about. So, I want to talk a little bit about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. Give you an overview of recent activity and talk about what they were trying to accomplish in the redesign of the GFE, the TIL, and the HUD, and then give you a summary of the proposed rule that comes along with the new integrated disclosures. And then we'll look at the forms. I believe everyone got a copy of the forms, and we'll go over those real quickly, and you have hard copies of those, I believe, as well. The new loan estimate form is going to replace and will be a combination of the good faith estimate and the truth in lending disclosure. And the closing disclosure form will be the new HUD-1 statement. And so in the future, we will all know when a person entered the business if they do or do not know what a HUD statement is. And I might continue calling it a HUD statement just out of habit. And then we'll talk about next steps and have some time for questions. One thing I would say is if you have a question, just type it in. We'll stop and answer the question. Sometimes being a little bit interactive is the best way to go. So the next slide here is a legal disclosure. It says that you should not act or rely on any of the information contained in this, which kind of hurts my credibility up front. So that's why we show it up front and not at the end. I have a little tongue in cheek there. So the CFPB took a lot of comments when it came time to redesign these forms, and this was kind of the historic closing problem scenario from the consumer's perspective that they identified, kind of that nightmare scenario, if you will, from the consumer's perspective. So you've got the buyer and the realtor have arrived at the title company for closing. Your buyer is frustrated. They have no idea how much money they were responsible to bring in. They've not seen a copy of the settlement statement. You are also frustrated. You've not had a chance to view the settlement statement, and there are some things on there that perhaps you could have corrected. Loan officer is saying that the title company is responsible for the delay, and we're actually saying it's the loan officer. We're actually saying we just got documents 3 minutes ago, and you sent the buyer to the lobby. And obviously that's not every scenario, but it was kind of that scenario that the consumer said, we really want to avoid that frustrating experience. And certainly that's not every experience, but I think we've all probably had those experiences. So the new set of disclosures has fixed that problem. I think that the CFPB has done a good job of guaranteeing that that specific problem will never occur again. You will never arrive at a closing not knowing how much money you have to bring in, and you will never arrive at a closing again not having seen a copy of the HUD statement. But having said that, some other issues have, of course, been created. Nothing occurs in a vacuum, and we'll talk about some of those. So talking a little bit about the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, it was created as part of kind of that massive sweeping legislation, the Dodd-Frank Act in 2010, which was kind of in response to the financial crisis and was intended to address a lot of the issues that arose due to the financial crisis. And so the CFPB was born as part of that legislation and or chartered through that legislation. And, you know, their goal says that they are an agency that helps consumer financial markets work by making rules more effective and by consistently and fairly enforcing the rules. And I think that's going to be a hallmark, as we'll see, of the CFPB, that there is an intention to be more cooperative in enforcing rules that are already on the books. They don't just do mortgages or closing disclosures. They have quite a few areas of interest. Their primary areas of interest include credit card agreements, student loans, mortgage servicing, which I'll talk about in a second, mortgage disclosures, which we're going to specifically talk about today, cell phone prepaid cards, and general purpose reloadable cards. You do not need to be concerned. The government has not shrunk. The CFPB does not replace any other agency. It is a new agency and will work with other federal and state agencies. And I think that that is going to be kind of a hallmark of how the CFPB works, that they really do intend to be what I would call a regulatory coordinator with agencies that already exist. And whether you know it or not, you have likely seen the fallout of some of what the CFPB has already done in mortgage servicing, for instance. A lot of the decisions that large servicers are making today are based on rulemaking that has come out of the CFPB. I think last year, Bank of America got out of correspondent lending. A few weeks ago, Wells Fargo said that they weren't going to do any more joint ventures. They were canceling all of their joint ventures. And even, I think, connected was MetLife's departure from the servicing and origination arena. One of the things that the CFPB can do is designate any financial institution that falls within their area of oversight as a SIFI. And a SIFI is a strategically important financial institution, and it gives the CFPB broad regulatory oversight of your operations. So you can see why a company like MetLife, whose primary business was not mortgage servicing, may decide to not subject themselves to that type of oversight voluntarily. So lots of things that are occurring already today are because of or in response to rulemaking from the CFPB. As I mentioned, they're a federal regulatory coordinator. They have spent a lot of time establishing memorandums of understanding with lots of different types of agencies, both public and private. They have MOUs with the Federal Reserve Board, the National Credit Union Association, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, I believe the Mortgage Bankers Association, the Federal Trade Commission, and also have established MOUs with state regulatory agencies as well. And the thinking is that if you can coordinate enforcement activity by the sharing of information, then you will be able to much more uniformly enforce regulatory action and drive regulatory action at a federal level. So Each state will now have a state regulatory coordinator. Each state's Department of Financial Institutions will work with the CFPB to kind of create what they're calling a new form of federalism, as it were, to enforce laws that are already on the books and to force compliance with things that already exist. And that's a unique hallmark, I think, of the CFPB, is this federal and state coordination. And so the expectation that you may take from that is increased regulatory oversight and also perhaps increased enforcement action on both the state and the federal level, certainly in the early days of the CFPB. So they've been very busy since they were chartered and came into being, and they have written lots of rules and done lots of things. The integrated disclosures that we're going to discuss in more depth today, the final rule for those is scheduled for release in early fall of this year. And so that's why we're talking about it now, because there are some significant implications that come with the rollout of those new forms. Earlier this year, they released other final rules covering appraisals, high-cost mortgages, homeownership counseling, ability to repay, and qualified mortgage. The acronyms ATR and QM are probably things that if we are not already familiar with, we will become familiar with. Loan originator compensation, escrow requirements under the Truth in Lending Act, and then, of course, mortgage servicing rules, which has some significant impacts on our markets. This is a QuestSoft compliance survey, and I'm showing this to you to give you an idea of what lenders are thinking about today, what residential mortgage lenders are thinking about today. And the number one area of current concern for residential lenders, 58.8, almost 60% of them, the new combined TIL and GFE and the new HUD is their number one area of concern. All other CFPB rulemakings are their second highest level of concern. So this is what's occupying lenders' minds at the moment. They do not know exactly how they're going to comply with the new rules and what it means for their business model long term. And it's top of mind for the